Caledonian Elixir. Live from Glasgow, Scotland, welcome to the Caledonian Elixir. I'm your host, Vincent, and we are live on YouTube, Twitter X, Rumble, Facebook, and of course, as a podcast on Spotify. And if you want to support us, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow wherever you find us. So, welcome back. If you're finding us for the first time, we're a show that covers everything from politics to the paranormal, always told with Scottish wit and true grit, with guests and callers. And listen, we're going to do something a little bit different today that I know you're going to enjoy, so stay with us. We have a panel of guests on, or coming on in a moment, to discuss with us the international disarray the world is in. For example, we've got President Trump using the American military to kidnap the head of foreign governments, an attempted assassination on President Putin, the war continuing to be waged in Ukraine, potential strikes any day against Iran, and then we've got this Greenland situation. The last 2 weeks have been a roller coaster ride. And if you're confused, stay here, as we're here to make sense of it. So, my first guest is Bruce Wilkinson. He is a political analyst, chief organizer to the Group Power, organization Group Power to the Public, publishing his geopolitical insights on his blog. He is coming from Washington, US, and also with us is Hugh McIntyre. He is a Republican, Trump supporter, chef, and originally from Scotland, but now resides in the US and California. So, without further ado, Bruce and Hugh.
How's it going?
Hello, Bruce and Hugh.
Thanks for
Can
having
you
me
hear
on.
me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me, Bruce. What about you? Hugh, can you hear? Right. Yeah, we can hear.
Awesome.
Right. So, the both of you have been on the show before. There are, however, quite stark differences between you and between, all of us. So, Bruce, I want to direct this question first of all to you, and then Hugh, I would like to hear your views on it, and then I'll have an open debate, an open discussion on the subject, and the same with subsequent questions. So, I was speaking to former State Department official Matt Holt on this show a couple of months ago, and he was telling me how he thought a major factor responsible in large part for the Trump administration's aggressive actions towards Venezuela is essentially, Rubio. What do you think the reason Trump so flagrantly violated international law by that decapitation strike against Maduro? And Bruce, I'll direct that to you, and then Hugh, chime in afterwards.
Thanks, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, I think that he doesn't care that much about international law, but to be fair, no U.S. president really does. This is not the first time we've captured the head of another state before. We took out Noriega in Panama as well. So this isn't our first rodeo down this route. And I don't really think it's very odd. In fact, he got a lot of support, both sides of the aisle. Democrats, were cheering him on for doing the thing as well. So it's what's unusual is how little he tried to cover up what he was doing. And I think that flummoxed a lot of people, because it felt like a lot of people in the media, especially the talking heads, also politicians, they were looking for that international law cover that they were going to have. They thought, well, maybe we got this drugs thing that we could call it. We're arresting him for drugs or something like that. And then there was other aspects that he's violating rules. Our sanctions, our U.S. sanctions. He's violating them. He's mean. He's or something like that. People calling him all sorts of names. Saying that he's hurts his own people. So there's just all these different reasons why. And and then you have Trump. He just comes out and he's just like, yeah, we're going to take their oil and we're going to run their country. We're in charge now. And it was kind of like a breath of fresh air, honestly, because I was like, that's what I've been saying about all the presidents going back in my lifetime. That's what they were all about. And here he is. He just says it. So I kind of give him a thumbs up on that part. I still don't like it, but at least he's lying to us. It's like past president.
Yeah. It's similar to back in 2017, 2018 when they did the strikes against Syria and they bombed the Syrian airbase. And he basically said bluntly to the media that we're staying for the oil. We're going to keep a few hundred soldiers in Syria for the oil. There is not that charade or that veil of democracy that lie, that you see that is conveyed over and over again by former presidents in order to pursue foreign policy goals. He's saying it as it is. He wants the resources, he wants the minerals, and he wants to spread American power throughout the region. So it's refreshing to hear that honesty. What isn't refreshing to see is the blatant demonstration of American power in violation of international law. Because where does it stop? Where does it end? Hugh, you're really staunchly in the MAGA camp. You're a Trump supporter. What's your views on the Venezuela issue and Trump decapitating the Maduro? We've got an issue with Hugh.
Can you see me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yes, can you see me? I see my image is missing. Oh, there we go. Hi.
Oh, yeah, I can see you and hear you fine. Hugh, I'm going to need to take you off if you don't clear up. Right. There seems to be an issue with Hugh.
Yeah.
What's his issue? Right, Hugh, I want you to come off, and then come back on. See if that does anything, right? I want you to take yourself off and then come back on, and I'll just talk to Bruce. He was actually telling me just before this show started, there was a storm in the West Coast, and okay, so looks like we've got an issue with you. Hopefully, he can come back on and we can resolve that. So, what do you think as to what my host said on my show a couple of months ago? What do you think to his point that this is motivated by Secretary of State's Rubio animus towards the Venezuelan and Cuban government, that he's wanted to carry out this regime change operation in South America and the Caribbean for some time, and that this is just an example of his influence in the Trump administration? What do you think to that?
There's definitely some truth to that. I would say, though, that this has been a quarter century long policy of the United States to put pressure on first Hugo Chavez and now Maduro, and that we've been against, the United States has been against them since the beginning. The CIA was behind a 2002 coup, and so this goes long. This goes way back. It's the same. The Bush administration certainly hated Hugo Chavez. That's Hugo Chavez famously said, when he went to the United Nations, gave a speech, they smelled the sulfur coming from Bush, because he had spoken just before him. And
so, Hugh, one second, Hugh, can you hear us now, or can you say something?
Yeah, It's just every time you talk and Bruce talks, sometimes there's a little delay with the mouth and the speech. I think it might be the weather, perhaps.
Right. Okay. So
Because I
Bruce,
think Bruce is sitting in the phone.
Bruce, just finish your point, and then Hugh, I'll repeat the question and get you to give your views afterwards.
Okay.
So, Bruce, can you just finish what you're saying, please?
Yeah. Well, my point is that I think that Rubio's been advanced to his position because of his beliefs. It's not so much that he's pushing the agenda as he's the man for the job when they needed it, and he's supported by, like I said, by the Democrats as well. I think it's interesting that he came into his position right after Kissinger died, because Kissinger hit 100 years old and then he croaked last year before, right before Marco Rubio came on. And then Marco Rubio, we've been hearing a whole lot about how he's also the national security advisor as well. Now, Marco Rubio, for some reason, has gotten respect on both sides of the aisle in Congress. They all, Democrats and Republicans, he's the guy that they would say is the sharp guy in the room. He's the guy that they trust in a weird way in Trump's government. So I think he's just a continuation of these things. I think he's the guy for the job and for messing with Latin America.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of the old neocon outfit, such as the Bush and Cheney, etc. Hugh, my question earlier was, it was essentially about the conversation I had with Matthew Ho, and how he told me that he thought the Secretary of State Rubio essentially was in part largely responsible for Trump administration's aggressive actions towards Venezuela and the decapitation strike against Maduro. Why do you think Trump carried out that decapitation strike in violation of international law?
Well, I personally think even though I am a Trump supporter, I don't agree with every single thing he does. I think there's more to it. I think it's not just to do with the narcotics getting sent up. I think there's way more to it. Could it be because the presence that America wants to have because of the ongoing threats with China and China trying to get an influence in South America? I'm not too sure, but I think there's way more to it than just trying to take Maduro out, basically based on narcotics and stuff like that, of basically what we were told. What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. They've been saying that they're trying to they had the national security review that they put out that talked about shifting towards securing the Western Hemisphere for the United States and pushing out and the Don Roe doctrine or whatever. And
the Don Roe doctrine.
Yeah, which goes extra far, because it's way worse in some ways than the Monroe doctrine, because he's talking about you can't even trade. That's what he's saying. He's basically saying that he doesn't want Latin America to trade with China, which I don't think that's actually ever gonna work at all. But that's kind of what the gist is.
It's also what right does the United States have to tell countries in Latin America who they can trade with? But what really strikes me is the impotence, especially of our leaders in the West, in terms of their response to this. Because they preach to Russia, they preach to China about international law. Yet when Trump comes in, decapitates the head of a foreign government in Latin America, and basically impounds and attacks these vessels leaving from Venezuelan ports, there's silence, there's crickets. Do you know what? There's a video I'd like to play. It's video one. It's our Prime Minister here, Starmer's response to and someone from the media asking him questions about, is this a violation of international law? And the response is pathetic. Question.
To Donald Trump about what's happened in Venezuela?
No, I haven't, and it's obviously a fast-moving situation, and we need to establish all the facts. What I can say is that the UK was not involved in any way in this operation. And as you'd expect, we're focusing on British nationals in Venezuela and working very closely with our embassy. And so I will want to talk to the president, I will want to talk to allies, but at the moment, I think we need to establish the facts. I think President Trump is doing a press conference later, so hopefully more information will come out then.
What is clear, though, which the White House has said, is that America carried out strikes on Venezuela and captured their leader, Maduro. Some politicians in this country have already condemned that. Do you?
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as
So that is Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Hugh, you're from Scotland, and so he's kind of your Prime Minister still too. What do you think of his response to what Trump did, the Trump administration did in Venezuela? It's quite impotent. It's quite weak, isn't it?
Well, to be honest, I couldn't hear it all because I was having problems with the video, but I have been listening to Starmer basically and his responses to a lot of it, and it's like it's like Starmer's not taking a stance with Europe, NATO, and stuff like that on it. He's not taking a stance with the USA. It's almost like he's just sitting in the sidelines. He doesn't want to take a side and then embarrass himself any more than obviously he already has on every single thing he does. But it's like we've got to look to the point, and now it's like there's ongoing things with Donald Trump and Mark Rutte from NATO, and as far as I'm aware, there's an agreement being tied up for the US to have some form of influence in Greenland just now. Obviously, Donald Trump doesn't want to come out and say what that actually is, or maybe he doesn't know the full scope of what that is itself. But I think anything that comes from Keir Starmer, no one listens to him. It's like he was my. I mean, if I went to the UK,
he wasn't even present in Davos at the World Economic Forum in the last few days. We had Macron.
I mean, no one pays attention to anything Starmer says with regards to human rights and NATO laws and stuff like that, because we've also got to remember it's like the UK was part of NATO when we were bombing Yugoslavia and stuff like that. Remember, it's so it's like Starmer says one thing and he flops over to the other. You just can't believe a thing that comes out of his mouth, and
that was a good example of the West not only doing a regime change in Europe, but they actually changed the borders. They created a whole new country in Kosovo that is only recognised by a handful of nations around the world. Most of the planet to this day doesn't.
Well, the thing is the thing is, we've got to remember, right? Obviously, the UK, Starmer, and everyone, they're not happy that Donald Trump's American forces, Delta Force, kidnapped Maduro, right?
Are you sure about that? Can you say that with certainty? Like,
yeah, but listen, this is a part I'm getting to, right? So they're not happy with that, right? But we've got to remember the whole thing that was happening in Kosovo with Yugoslavia and stuff like that. The British SES smashed the window and kidnapped their leader as well from their country. So it's kind of like the Brits can do it, but America does it, and we get criticized, you know. So it's like the Brits are doing one thing, then they're acting like hypocrites, and they're saying, "Oh, America can't do that. They can't kidnap Maduro." You have already done that before. You got your special forces.
Are you saying that Milosevic was kidnapped by the special forces of the UK?
Yeah, they smashed the window of his car and they dragged him out of the car window and they took him on a helicopter.
That was an SES operation?
Yeah, that was the SES operation, yeah.
Right, okay. Well, that was a joint mission along with other NATO nations. As you know, the US was involved in the bombing campaign.
Usually with those sort of things, as far as I remember back to then, the only thing that America was involved is if the SES needed air support, they would offer it, you know. But the SES were the ones that kidnapped them and dragged them out of the car. So this is what I'm saying. It's like the UK Starmer, although Starmer was not the Prime Minister at the time, but it was the UK as a whole. And it's kind of like they done it, but we can't, you know. It's, yeah.
Hypocrisy.
Well,
Hypocrisy.
it's-
What do you
it's-
think
it's
about
like-
this?
Hypocrisy is a constant thing right now. I mean, you know, it's like we're such hypocrites. I feel like we moved on from irony, you know, was like a thing, and then now it's like we're in the era of hypocrisy. It's just like blatant hypocrisy where, you know, it's I don't know what's going on, but that's people are just kind of okay with it, you know, or not okay.
Yeah.
With it. There's nothing you could do.
Do you know what strikes me is, again, another glaring example of the hypocrisy. For years ad nauseum, I have heard the media, especially on outfits like LBC Radio in the UK, lectures about how Russia is in flagrant violation of international law, but they don't observe or care about international law. Yet today, there was a caller on LBC Radio who was calling out Trump's actions in terms of acquiring the sovereign rights of Greenland. And he was saying, well, this is in contravention of international law. And the presenter retorted by saying, oh, don't be so naive. Why are you quoting international law? The world is now a multipolar world with major powers. We don't retort to the act. We don't act like Putin and Xi, but we can't abide by international law when other major world powers do not. And I was just thinking to myself, they're actually saying it out in the open now that they don't want to abide by international law. And it's all, I'm not saying it's refreshing, but it's this way that they've been forced into a corner into admitting to us all who and what they are now. So in
See,
terms of
sorry. See the thing with China and Russia, right? Russia and China, most times, not all the times, especially like Tiananmen Square and stuff like that, they've been masters at hiding the violations of human rights and stuff like that, right? It goes way more than what we actually see on the media, right? The problem with America and Britain is like they're not very good at hiding it. That's a problem, right? So they get called out when they do it. China and Russia they hide biggest majority of it, you know. See when it comes to the whole thing we were talking about why Trump's going for that, right? When you actually look at the map and you look at the USA and you look where Venezuela is, right? And then you understand that America's got Alaska, which obviously they bought off Russia over 100 years ago, right? And then you look where Greenland is. So Greenland's kind of like northeast, right? Alaska's like kind of northwest, kind of attached to Canada and stuff like that, right? And then you've got Venezuela south. It's almost as if I'm not too sure if Trump's plan for the Iron Dome or the Gold Dome, which they're calling it now, is to have early missile warning systems on Venezuela, to have it in Greenland, and to have it in Alaska. And obviously, between there's obviously a space in between those three locations where things could come in. But you know, I really think the true reason he wants Venezuela is to put early warning systems down there, especially with China and Russia having these hypersonic weapons that go 6,000 miles per hour that are pretty much unstoppable.
I would like to respond to something you said earlier that the SAS captured Milosevic. It was the Serbian police.
Well, that's not what the media was saying then. They actually says the British SAS kind of pulled the cars out in front of them and they smashed the window and they dragged them from the car. Maybe someone's trying to change it, but that definitely was a story back then.
Slobodan Milosevic was not captured by the British SAS. He was arrested by the Serbian police in 2001 and then transferred to the International Criminal Tribunal.
Or maybe it was his number 2 Arkan. Maybe it was him that was dragged from it because he was the one who was leading his forces for him. It was one of the two. It was either Slobodan Milosevic or it was Arkan.
So-
it was
so
one of
if-
them. That was,
Right? If this decapitation strike enabled the Trump administration to have more influence in Venezuela and allowed them to put interceptors that could potentially intercept Russian missiles, would that give you? Would you support that mission then to decapitate Maduro? What's your view on this?
I would support Trump on it, right? But one condition,
You
right,
do support it, right?
is it's like one condition, right? Okay, I can understand Russia's stance on it as well, right? Because Russia's surrounded by U.S. bases all over the place, right? If America is able to have early warning systems and that to protect U.S. soil, he needs to start closing down all these military bases around the world that's surrounding Russia, because the way Russia's probably thinking of it just now is how do we know the USA doesn't have hypersonic weapons in any of these countries surrounding us that could hit us within minutes, you know? So America gets their gold dome, but effectively, if America wanted to, they're protected, but they could hit Russia with a nuke. You know, that's the way Russia's probably
What do you
thinking.
think about? What do you think about what Hugh is saying there?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like Russia and China just aren't a threat at all. You know, I mean, I thought it's really interesting when people are talking about Venezuela or when they're talking about Greenland. It's like, especially the leaders of Europe and stuff, they like to bring back up Russia or China. You know, it's like, you know, and it's like China, especially when it comes to Greenland, it's like China has nothing to do with Greenland. You know, they're no threat to Greenland whatsoever. They were trying to like looking at maybe mining there, and then they were like, it's too much work. You know, so you know they're not a threat. They're just not a threat to the United States. They're not a threat to anyone. They're not a threat to Europe. None of these, neither of those countries are a threat to anybody. You know, I mean, unless you're like right on their border and you're a little country that's being a giant douchebag, you know, then like, you know, they're just not going to mess with anyone. And so this idea that like the United States needs like this golden dome thing around it, you know, when no other country in the world needs that, you know, is insane. You know, it probably won't even work. It's just another Star Wars where they just suck all the money out of us and put it in their pockets. You know,
yeah, because we've obviously been down this road before. We've been talking about this since Ronald Reagan, you know, for a long time. The Star Wars kind of thing that never happened.
Big suck of money out of the pockets of Americans and into the military-industrial complex. You know, and these are private industries. You know, and they're really subpar these days. The American weapons are not what they used to be. You know, I mean, we're good at that things like what happened with Maduro. I mean, like, but that's really not like a war, right? You know, that's just like tactical operation. It was overkill. You know, they had 100 jets or something and helicopters and just firing missiles and killing people like crazy. And people always also forget that, you know, a lot of people were saying that this Venezuela thing had like insiders. I actually doubt it. I don't think they had much for insiders. They probably had some low level people, you know, but I don't think they have people deep in there. They keep on saying, "Oh, Delcy Rodriguez is like in on it," and you know, I'm like, that's just propaganda. I think they're just making that stuff up. In fact, I don't think that they control Venezuela right now. You know, I don't even think they're going to get, if they wanted to put missile interceptors in there, which aren't any good most of the time. They don't even work. Then like they're probably not going to be allowed to, because it seems like basically Maduro's government's still in charge, and I think, and you know, they're not talking about it too much anymore because I think they want to kind of hide that. They're like, we just had to do something, so we did it, and now we're going to lift up all the sanctions and like do business with Venezuela again, because you know that was always the option. Venezuela didn't quit doing business with the United States. The United States quit doing business with Venezuela back in 2019. And so what they do, they went to like, do
you think this could lead to a domino effect if Venezuela can't export their oil? What do you think the effect on Cuba will be? And
well, that's interesting. I don't think Cuba's not fallen. You know, I mean, they'd have to kill every last Cuban for Cuba to fall. It's just not going to happen. So, you know, and I'm not sure if Marco Rubio probably would like that because he's such a crazy person. But you know, I mean, that's the only way. I mean, the whole Cuba thing I think is insane personally, because like, look, it's like 1962. You know, 1962, 63. Can you guys just take your foreign policy back, please? Why are we embargoing Cuba? It's 2026. You know, that's like 60 years ago. Like some people who are all dead now. All the people who decided to embargo Cuba, they're dead. They're like not even, you know, everyone else who's alive and in government today, even, you know, they had nothing to do with this decision. And yet you know, all those young people have to go, you know, we have to like follow through with this thing of like, you know, keeping these insane sanctions on Cuba, which is like 90 miles from Florida. And meanwhile, this is where it gets crazy. Meanwhile, right now, Canadians, 1 million Canadians a year go to Cuba for vacation. Okay. I mean, like, how to make that make sense? You know, I mean, that's not even counting the Europeans that fly in to Cuba for vacation.
Yeah. I've got family members of myself who have traveled to Cuba
for no reason.
Yeah. I would like to transition this to Iran. Now, recently, again,
can I just touch on one thing?
Go ahead.
Before we move over? Okay, so I kind of looked it up. So basically, the person the SAS had pulled from the car was his top general, who is supposed to have been kind of going rogue in a kind of way. And his name was called Stanislav Galik. And basically, it says the SAS had dragged him from the car, I think in the 2000s, I think it was. And obviously, he had been wanted for mass killings, almost like an ethnic cleansing, you know. So it was his top general who was pulled from the car. But general or whatever, doing that in someone else's country, it doesn't make the UK okay for them and not okay for us, you know.
Okay, it's a good fair point. I would like to transition this now to Iran. And again, I was on LBC Radio, and the politicians and presenters there on LBC were conveying these three reasons, these three arguments as to why there is a revolution in Iran and that the regime deserves to be toppled. Now, the first reason is Iran isn't a democracy, but yet neither is Vietnam, and we're not trying to overthrow Vietnam, right? And maybe it's because the Vietnamese government allows American corporations to do business there. Second was Iran supports terrorism. Yet, at the same time these killings were going on in Iran, the leader of Syria, who is a former head of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, al-Jilani, was killing hundreds of Kurds in Aleppo and killing protesters there. Yeah, we don't call him a terrorist. Instead, Trump calls him a handsome man, and he gets invitations to Downing Street and, you know, the White House. And the third is Iran is killing protesters. Well, again, so was al-Jilani at the same time. So the reason
the United States.
Yeah, the reason I'm here now, yeah, that's a good point. So the reason I'm here ad infinitum by our media was broken apart when I think about it. So I would like to play a video of video 2, and this video is a video by a well-known political analyst, Scott Ritter, and I would like to get your views on what Ritter says here, and then just expand the argument as to why these protests or riots or revolutions take place in Iran.
This was something that was cooked up in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, Lindsey Graham has admitted it. This is something that Netanyahu and Trump cooked up when Netanyahu was visiting Mar-a-Lago. This was all planned. There was extensive planning going on between the Mossad, the CIA, British intelligence, Dutch intelligence, and every intelligence agency in the world that has been lined up against the Iranians. You know, and yet the United States didn't pull the trigger until it was too late. And I just have to sit there and go, Trump knew what he was doing. I mean, it seems to me that Trump set up Lindsey Graham, set up Netanyahu, set them all up because they shot their bolt. the Mossad network that was used is gone, finished. I mean, the Israelis panicked in the end. They when they lost communication with them, they tried to shove in a whole bunch of new Starlink.
Right? Was that playing okay for you guys?
Yeah. That was playing good.
So, what do you think?
It kept freezing for me, but I kind of understand where it was going.
Right. So I guess for your benefit, you like Scott Ritter was maintaining the point that there were Mossad on the ground and that Trump allowed Mossad to make their move, and yet the Israelis and Mossad expected the Americans on their part to go in, bomb Iran, and eventually the government would topple with protests, with the undercover operations by Mossad and the bombing campaign, yet it didn't transpire. So Trump has let the Mossad, get decapitated, essentially, become decapitated, decimated in Iran. So Bruce, start with you. What do you think is happening in Iran now with the protests and in regards to what Ritter said too?
Well, I don't consider them protests. Yeah, I mean this is all fake stuff with Mossad and like CIA, MI6. It's funny that he said, I think he said Netherlands intelligence is always that, which I was funny that Scott Ritter would say that, but yeah, I really think that like this wasn't much for protests. I mean, they always do this. This is the same playbook every single time. Every country in the world there's protests. Protests happen anywhere on anything. It's just normal. Now, so they happen. They were there happening for a little while. A week goes by, then the protests go nuts, and people start burning stuff down. Did you even hear how many mosques got burned down? I heard that 62 mosques got burned down. I mean, that's not counting. There's police stations burnt down. Yeah, by the protesters. Police stations got burnt down. Government buildings got burnt down. I heard people got lynched. I mean, protesters firing into crowds of people. I mean, this was not like, oh yeah, let's go and march in the streets for peace, or whatever, or for better lives. So, I mean, in the beginning, there was some of that, but just very quickly, it was just filled with people, and you can hire people, all across the Middle East to come in and act that way. I mean, there's just a whole network of folks that flow around from conflict to conflict, that get paid.
It's interesting that once they cut off Starlink, the protest died. That's very interesting to me. As soon as like Trump and Netanyahu and all these people made it clear that like the protesters, what was that official who said that like the Mossad's walking with the protesters? I mean, it was a U.S. official that said that. That's interesting because there were videos of alleged protesters being taken into dark rooms and having their throats slit, and they were blaming that on the Iranian government. Now, we know what the Iranian government or the Iranian police will do. They'll shoot them. They'll shoot the protesters, or they'll hang them. They don't take them into dark rooms, slit their throats, film it, and then upload it to YouTube or the X. That doesn't happen. I don't believe that is the Iranian intelligence or the Iranian police that are doing that. Hugh, what's your view on this and what's happening in Iran?
Well, see, just like with the whole January 6th, right? We had the FBI that was infiltrating all the protesters and stuff like that, encouraging them to push forward and into the building, right? What's to say that Mossad couldn't have been doing similar stuff in Iran? How do we know that Mossad wasn't infiltrating the protesters in Iran? How do we know Mossad, which has been accused of atrocities in the past, how do we know they've not shot people and blamed it on the Iranian government? It's like, I just don't trust Israel. I don't trust Mossad. Obviously, the whole thing that happened in Israel to the concert goers, there's a lot of people debating over that, because basically the time it took military to get there it was almost like they stood down to allow it to happen, right? So they could enter Palestine, the Palestine territory. So at the moment, we've got Israel running the American government. There's just, I mean, no one can say they're not, right? And to me, I'm pissed off with Donald Trump because I heard that Israel's getting billions and billions more funding. And you're thinking to yourself, why do they need that if America's toppling the Iranian regime and basically Hamas has been taken out and Palestine has been wiped off the map? Why do they need these billions of dollars, And it's because of this AIPAC thing, lobbyists and everything, we've got Israel controlling the country. We've got Mossad, which some people think may have been the people that took out Charlie Kirk and stuff like that, by direct orders by Netanyahu. So going back to the Iran thing, it's like I really think Mossad's probably been infiltrating all the protesters, and I think there's genuine protesters, and obviously they seriously do want a change because obviously that's a regime that forced themselves into power way back in I think 76 or 77 or something like that, right? But yeah, Mossad's definitely involved. We know fine well they're involved,
That's a big thing for you to say that, because when I had Bruce, when I last had Hugh on, it was about 9 months ago, and he was really defending the Israeli actions that were happening in Palestine. At least it came across like that to me. He was defending the Israeli government, and he came across much more in support of Israel's actions. So it looks like there has been a shift. Is that fair to say, Hugh? That there's been a shift in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you have more time to think of things, obviously, when all those people get killed, the first thing people think is Israel's got the right to retaliate. But when you take a step back and you start finding trickling information coming out that obviously it took, I think, like 4 or 6 hours for the military to get where all these people were getting slaughtered. Yet someone said they could jump on a tourist helicopter and get there within about 45 to 1 hour, right? And they're saying, they obviously stood down and allowed that to happen. It's almost like, with Afghanistan, right? It's like Dick Cheney was seen on camera on Fahrenheit 9/11. He says the only way we could enter Afghanistan is if we had another Pearl Harbor, and then the Twin Towers got hit. I think the same thing happened with that concert. Obviously, they were real terrorists. I think Israel knew it was going to happen. They stepped down to allow as many people to be murdered as humanly possible, so they could make a big case to go and enter Palestine and start wiping out not just the terrorists, but obviously collateral damage, as you call it, which is the innocent people who are they just happen to be there,
And again, just for the sake of I'm on YouTube, I don't condone what you just said. So I don't know. I personally don't know if he stood down.
I think they definitely did. I mean, I agree with everything you just said.
They may very well.
I go further.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I believe that they have definitely used the attacks, the Hamas attack on October 7th. They've exploited that, and they've carried out what in my opinion is ethnic cleansing.
Don't forget the Hannibal directive.
Yeah, there is a Hannibal directive. They have completely leveled Gaza to the ground. They've killed so many aid workers, British aid workers. I was telling you this the other day about a British aid convoy that was marked, and there were 3 trucks, and they informed the IDF that they would be operating in the vicinity. So not only were the trucks marked, but again, the IDF were informed that they would be present, and yet they destroyed them, killing multiple British aid workers. So there seems to be a deliberate effort to destroy the infrastructure of Gaza. And I don't see how destroying the civilian infrastructure, whether it's desalination tanks, schools, hospitals, how that is destroying Hamas. It's destroying the ability for the civilian population to maintain an existence in that territory.
Well, that's one way to do it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you kill everybody and you'll kill Hamas as well, right? So, I mean, I think that's kind of what's happening. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
I've got no love for Israel whatsoever.
I mean, obviously, there was further information that came out that it's like where the sea is, over at Palestine. It's there's already talks of BlackRock and stuff like that building like a touristy kind of resort down there, and it makes you think to yourself, as with obviously with Trump's family involved in the hotel stuff as well. That Kuchta guy, I think his son-in-law, I think it is, who's Jewish. So there's people thinking the reason they're completely flattening it is because there's already plans drawn up what they want to do with Palestine.
Yeah, BlackRock will come in and just rebuild it and make billions in the process.
And the thing is, as well, I don't like the fact that Donald Trump is basically like buddy with what's his name? Is it Larry Fink or something like that, the head of BlackRock, right? Yeah. I don't like how close Donald Trump is to him because it's like they rigged the stock market, and Trump's assassination attempt. It's like the guy that tried to shoot him. He was seen in the commercial for BlackRock and stuff like that. Why would Trump be doing this? Unless it didn't really happen, as some people say,
Yeah.
So
well,
Bruce,
the Zionist stuff is, just to say, it's like I'm pretty strongly against Zionists, and there's a big difference between Zionism and Judaism, in my opinion. One's like a political construct of elite. If you can be a Catholic like Biden and also declare yourself a Zionist, then it's not a religion. I mean, it's a political perspective, and I think it's a political perspective of a lot of the power elite, not just like the Jewish billionaires, but also, I mean, it's got a huge portion of like of all the billionaires, seem to support Zionism because it works for them. It's a very good religion. It's in like the Zionist idea, they are the superior people, and everyone else but Zionists, that's who it is really. Everyone else but Zionists.
Yeah. We definitely have a greater Israel project. I mean, not only we've been expanding into the West Bank and killing Palestinians in the West Bank all the way through their siege and bombardment of Gaza. So the argument that they're only doing this to target Hamas and destroy Hamas, well, then why are they destroying the West Bank? Why are they demolishing entire residences in the West Bank and taking more territory every single week there? That just goes against their argument. There's a video of a very popular podcaster who, see there, she makes a great argument as to why they're pushing this against Iran. Here we go.
Where should we begin? War everywhere? That's just what we're doing. It definitely seems like land grab everywhere. And it doesn't seem like it. That's what's happening. So many people, oh my gosh, you won't believe what these radicals are doing. And of course, it just seems to be that whenever Bibi Netanyahu's around the corner, like, hey, I want that piece of land, suddenly our media starts telling us, hey, you wouldn't believe how free these people are trying to get in Iran. These people are really, we need to free the Iranians. Oh, they've been living in oppression. Bibi is over here like, ooh, land. Oh, no, really? It's about spreading democracy. Code word, that's military code word for dropping bombs and stealing a bunch of stuff that isn't ours, a bunch of land that isn't ours. Anyways, war with Iran, it's now back on the table firmly. Why? Because, well, Israel wants it. I find it so funny when people make the argument, well, you wouldn't want to live in this country in the Middle East. You wouldn't want to live in Iraq. And obviously, the West is the best. Yeah, do you want to know why I wouldn't want to live there? Why I want to live in Libya? We want to live in Iraq? Because we bombed them. And we wouldn't stop bombing them. We bombed them pretty much.
Well, Candace Owens, most popular podcaster, and she's received a lot of slack recently from everyone, including Alex Jones. It's interesting. The main reason, however, at least one main reason is why I don't want an attack against Iran is history. And so I think all of us here know that in the early 50s, Iran's leader Mossadegh nationalised Iranian oil, taking it out of the hands of the British. And after that, the US and UK got involved with Operation Ajax using the CIA and MI6. And they overthrew Mossadegh and implanted the Shah, who was so oppressive to the Iranian people. We then got a revolution in the late 70s and got the Ayatollah. So we have been meddling in Iran for decades, at least for at least the 1950s. So I just don't think this is going to work out. I don't think it's going to help benefit the people of Iran, the United States, the UK. So I don't see why our intelligence communities are so committed to it, lest there is a benefit to one of our allies in the region. And who is our ally in the region who it could benefit? Israel. Israel benefits from the overthrow of the Ayatollah and the mullahs. So Hugh, what do you think about the return of the Shah, the return of the king, the return of the king to Iran? Do you think that's going to work out?
I suppose it's down to the people to make that decision themselves. It's like every time America and the UK stick their nose in and say this is what they people want, it turns out it's not what they want, and it's like look at all the Middle Eastern countries we've absolutely turned into crap holes. We tell lies about weapons of mass destruction and stuff like that, which to this day Tony Blair should be put in jail for that. Him and George Bush. I think obviously there needs to be honest elections for the people. There needs to be no influence by the USA trying to say who they think should be put forward. It should be solely down to the Iranian people. But remember, I told you this before, Vinny. I've got two friends who are from Iran, right? Mm-hmm. They don't like the way the Ayatollah was running the country. It's like people get put in jail. They were telling me all the horror stories of what was happening in Iran under this regime. The people do want a change, and you got to remember years ago they had protesters and they had snipers on the roof taking out protesters. So. But this is almost the point of no return. It's like this time's different. It's like the people. It's almost like the people really do want change this time, and they're not going to stop protesting until they get what they want. But I'm kind of worried that if America and Israel start, I'm kind of worried if America and Israel start bombing Iran, and if Iran does have nukes. How do we know they're not going to fall into their own hands?
Well, we had
that's my big concern. How do we know plutonium's not going to be stolen? How do we know plutonium's not going to be stolen and turned into dirty bombs and stuff like that? We just don't know.
Bruce,
I think it's down to the Iranian people.
I think that Israelis have nuclear weapons. I'm terrified that they have nuclear weapons. I mean, they're like the one country that's the secret nuclear weapons program, and they've got hundreds. They've got supposedly they've got over like 200. We don't even know how many nuclear weapons they have. There's so much, and that scares the crap out of me. Iran doesn't scare me at all. They basically haven't done anything to anybody. They basically defend themselves. They want to be like independent. They want to get. That was what the 1979 revolution was all about. They were like, we got to get free. We want to be a sovereign country. We want to have these foreigners like controlling us, and that's been their stance ever since. And frankly, Iran's is the more like well, when you look around the Middle East and you look at like the Islamic peoples of that area, they're even in Iran today. You know, you compare that to Saudi Arabia. The Iranians are you know they're just living kind of like pretty free lives for the most part compared to Saudi Arabia. It's apples and oranges, you know. And yet we're back Saudi Arabia, which is like a that's like a seriously oppressive regime. You know, that's
I mean,
like
there's
the
Saudi
one
Arabia. It's like if you're gay, they throw you off the top of a roof, you know. And
in
this is
Saudi
a country
Arabia.
we support, you know.
Yeah, you
Yeah, they
couldn't
throw you
drive
off.
if you're a woman until like 2
Yeah.
years ago.
And
And
obviously a
women,
lot of
that's where the women wear like the complete black with
the
like
burqas, yeah.
2 little eye holes. You know, that's Saudi Arabia. Iran, you know, it's like you don't have to have, you can have like a little scarf around your neck around your head if you want, but you could
Yeah.
go free without anything if you want to in Iran today. You know, so
There
it's,
seems to be a difference in views between you, Hugh, and you, Bruce, because from what I understand, you're conveying the argument, Hugh, that the Iranian people really want to rise up this time and overthrow the Iranian government, and these are the dying embers of our Iranian regime. Bruce, you're maintaining Iran's not a threat, and I think if I understand you correct, you're saying the Iranian people, the majority of them, don't consider our government a threat.
I'm not saying, Vinny, I'm not saying that Iran's not a threat. I'll be honest, just like what Bruce says as well. I mean, I've seen the Nostradamus movies from the 1980s when it spoke about a Middle Eastern country shooting nukes around the world and stuff like that. And obviously, when you hear all the threats that was coming from the Iranian regime saying if they got nukes, they would wipe Israel off the face of the planet and stuff like that, right?
Didn't Trump say that about Iran? Didn't Trump say he would flatten Iran?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who even speaks about nukes should be arrested, right? About using it on any country, right? It's supposed to be a deterrent, not to be using aggressively, right? But yeah, everyone kind of worries. I mean, just the same with the Iran war. When they said they had these drones that could take nukes to America and all that stuff, and it had everyone really, really panicking, right?
Who said that?
It's like they're doing the same thing with Iran as well. It's like I do believe that Iran has got nukes. They're trying to say they're trying to do it as an energy program, but a lot of people are saying you don't need that grade of plutonium for basically energy. It's like they're obviously doing it for weapons, right?
Well, the head of the IAEA, Grossi, has said that there's no evidence Iran has a weaponized nuclear program, and also the head of what is it, DIA, the American intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has also said there's no evidence Iran has a weaponized nuclear program. So even Trump's own people in his own administration are saying Iran doesn't have a weaponized nuclear program. So
I mean, you know, Tulsi Gabbard. It's like it's like everyone trusts what she says more than most of the people in the Trump administration, right? It's like she's a Democrat. She came to the Republican side, but she's somewhere in the middle kind of thing, and she's very honest because she's ex-military. I do believe everything she says. If she firmly believes they don't have nuclear capabilities based on all the secret information that she can actually view within her possession, then I trust her. You know, I don't trust all the warmongers out there. You know, it's like
then why do you believe Iran has a nuclear weapons program, and not only do they have the capability, but they have the intention?
I mean, I believe Tulsi Gabbard, but there's that little thing in the back of my head that thinks, what happens if she's wrong? You know, that's the thing. It's like you always think, I trust everything she says, but what happens if she's wrong?
well,
They've
I mean,
it's like they've already made threats to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. You know,
if they're wrong, if she's wrong and Iran has nukes, they're like, and one day they're like, we've got nukes, we got 50 of them. Then it's like, what's going to happen? Well,
and we can't invade them. We can't invade them or nothing.
That's
Well,
a good
so what?
thing.
Yeah, perfect.
Already been invaded.
It's not like, are they going to hit Israel? Israel's got three. They can hit Iran with they can destroy Iran. It'd be mutually assured destruction for them.
Yeah.
So it's like
It's because the whole it's because the whole thing with Israel as well. Israel's not supposed to have nukes, but a lot of people think they secretly do have nukes.
They definitely have nukes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely have nukes. They were working on giving South Africa nukes when they were apartheid. Just like them.
Yeah.
They were like the last country that before they broke with to break with South Africa. There was supposedly a nuclear test out in the off the tip of Africa that was clocked by a satellite. And people think it was Israel and South Africa testing a nuke together. And so
the thing with Israel as well. Something I think.
Wait a minute, Hugh. I want to ask you something you didn't address it. Why do you think that the Iranian people this time really want to rise up against the government, the majority of Iranian people? And why do you believe this is the dying embers of the failing regime in Iran? And if so, why do you think?
Yeah, it's like, as I say, I do have Iranian friends, and there's a lot of things the media tell you, and a lot of things that they tell me that just doesn't sound the same. I mean, obviously, there's a guy I'm friends with. I mean, I told you this before, Vinny, that he's got a relation in Iran. He owns a store, and obviously, America was following the tracks of one of the top military generals, and they blew the building up, so there was like collateral damage. And basically, his cousin, I think it was, lost a leg. Now, the thing is, he lost his business, and I think in Iran, it's like there was no compensation for what had happened. So pretty much him and his family out here were trying to gather up as much money as they could, and family in London he had, trying to send it over to help with medical expenses because they lost everything, a lot of Iranian people, they've got a sour taste in their mouth against their regime because it's like all this has been brought on by themselves, pretty much. It's like if the Iranian regime,
the US blew up that business, that I thought you said the U.S. hit them, and then like there was collateral damage from the United States. So it's like, shouldn't they be mad?
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. So I did question them on that. I says, are you not upset with the USA for doing that? And they say, yes, we are. But they went for one of the generals, and I think the general was in an apartment block which was above the shop or something. There was lots of houses and all that, and we know that it's like when the USA bombed that building, they pretty much done what Israel done. It's like they don't care if there's any civilian casualties. They just took the guy out. And as I said, USA done the bombing, and that was the big thing. I was surprised with him. I thought his family would hate the USA for being the ones that done it, but their hate was against the regime because the USA was after that family member. I mean, maybe they look at things differently from us. But I mean, it's like if America done that, my family members,
he's an Iranian exile. So wouldn't you expect an Iranian exile to want the Iranian government to be toppled?
He has lots of. It's like one of them has lots of family over there. So basically, it's like I was getting filled in of basically what life is like for them out there. Things are so hard for them out there. I mean, because obviously the price of things and everything like that, people struggle. This is all caused by the regime that wants all the money going towards military weapons and stuff.
Bruce, why do you think the Iranian currency is the way it is and the inflation in Iran Why is it the way it is?
Well, I mean, like we've been sanctioning them since like 1979.
Yeah, lots of sanctions. Yeah.
So, and look, and I think this is like kind of important. I mean, I've been working on this international stuff for, and protests and stuff. I've put on conferences like 15 years ago or something. That where we had people, we were against the U.S. attacking Syria at the time. All right, and we had Syrian people come to our conference. They were Syrians, and they came to our conference and they protested us because we didn't want the United States to get involved in Syria. And so it's just like every single country that the U.S. targets we've got expats around the world, that they'll put on the media to talk about this stuff. And anybody here in the United States from those countries, generally speaking, they're going to be the part of the population that didn't like the former government. And they're usually of the elites too, right? Because it's not easy to come to the United States unless you're rich. So that's the same with Venezuela. A lot of people I've talked to seem to think that, they're like, I know some Venezuelans. Well, yeah, and they saw a lot of stuff in the media from Venezuelans talking about how they were against Maduro. See, I personally think that like when it comes to Libya, I think the majority of the people supported Gaddafi in Libya. I think the majority of the biggest, at least the plurality of people supported Assad in Syria. I think the majority of people support Maduro in Venezuela, and I think the majority of people support Iran's government as well right now in those countries. I think that there's with Libya, that's the clearest cut thing. We basically flew in. By the way, in Libya, we also installed the former monarch of Libya back into Libya.
The return of the king.
Yeah, they returned the king to Libya, the son, the prince. That he went back to Libya as well. And so we're doing the same. We're trying to do the same thing with Iran. But in Libya, we had a whole government that we set up outside of that country, of expats only. And then they had protests within a week that turned violent. There's a plan from the 90s where Libya figured out that the CIA was training 10,000 people, a militia of 10,000 people just outside of their border to come in and try to take them over. I mean, this is the sort of stuff we do. Now, so, I mean, and they had a little protest and then went immediately violent. And then everyone was like, yeah, it's the protesters. They hate Gaddafi. Gaddafi, they did not hate.
And the Russians really regret backing that resolution that gave the US and the UK international support in the UN to carry out their bombardments using, a very.
But the thing was, it's like right after those protests, they had, all the supporters of the government, they poured out in the street to like show their support. And it was way bigger than the protests ever were. But the media didn't show it. And they acted like, everyone hated Gaddafi. And the same thing happened in Iran recently. Like, they had the protests, they turned violent. But the protests weren't as big as. Did you see the rallies afterwards? Because they didn't show the rallies afterwards to us. But if you show,
I saw Alex Jones. Alex Jones was uploading a lot of content showing rallies and claiming that these rallies were against the regime, against the government of Iran, and it turned out, it wasn't that at all. And he said he was mistaken and he got the wrong clip and stuff. But we know that the protests originally started because of hyperinflation. That the rial, the Iranian currency, was manipulated about 6 weeks, 2 months before these protests began. And standards of living, quality of life in Iran is just so bad now. So the protests were originally due to living conditions. And then we just saw it blow up, and all of a sudden, people are getting their throats slit, and people are getting humiliated in the streets. Police officers setting fire, and we're told the Iranian government are, for some reason, setting their own police officers on fire. But why would the Iranian government want to set their own police service on fire? Makes no sense.
This is.
Oh.
Yep.
Vinny,
Yeah,
can I just touch on a little thing? Vinny,
Yeah.
just something Bruce was talking about. I'm not too sure if he's aware of this. So, obviously, Vinny's in Scotland now, right? And you were talking about the Libya thing, right? You probably know the whole thing of why the whole thing started. It was the Pan Am flight. Do you remember the Pan Am flight? It was the
do.
Lockerbie bombing. It was the airplane that was bombed and it came down in Lockerbie in Scotland. A lot of people think that the CIA was involved in that, and it was so they could set up. It was like a false flag kind of thing. They needed something to be able to go after Libya, And
Yeah.
as you were saying as well, it's like the Gaddafi was running his country quite well. And I think the reason they went after Gaddafi, as far as I'm aware, I think they were wanting to pull away from the US dollar and go to the gold standard. I think
Yeah.
that's why the USA was looking for an excuse to go into Libya and go after Gaddafi. So, as I say, the whole Pan Am thing, there's a lot of people think that the CIA was involved in that. That was not Libya, but the USA Secret Service doing it and trying to put the blame on Libya. Did you hear something like that, Vinny?
Yeah, I've heard. I'm aware as to what happened with Lockerbie, and that was one of the worst disasters in Scottish history. And we still hear about that today. A lot of Libyans that are over here and have their Libyan exiles who wanted Gaddafi overthrown. And again, they would usually point to Lockerbie as a reason for why the Libyan government represented a threat to the UK. Hence, you had many people in
And
Scotland.
the thing is, as well, that it's like the two people that were accused of it were held in a Glasgow prison called the Barrel, I think it was called, isn't it, Vinny? The Barrel.
I'm not sure.
I don't think there was sufficient evidence to jail them to say they were the ones that done it. I think they just what was it they call it, a patsy or something like that. That's what they were. I think they were completely innocent. They got set up, and it's because they wanted to go after Libya, because Libya wanted to come off of the dollar and go on the gold standard. It's either to do with the dollar, gold, or oil. That's what all these things are started over.
I'm with you. I think that's probably true. I'd heard a little bit about that, but I don't remember all the details of it. But here's one thing though.
Lockerbie's a little place. That's where Andy Murray's from. The famous tennis player. It's a little town.
Another interesting thing about Lockerbie, after the Second World War, there were a lot of Ukrainians taken to Lockerbie because there was a prisoner of war camp there. And as you know, the Western Ukrainians fought against the British and the Americans in World War II. So members of the Ukrainian Galician SS were taken to Lockerbie, and members of my family back in the day actually were involved in the transportation of Ukrainians to this prison of war camp. And I say that to people and they go, well, why would they want to take Ukrainians to, prisoners of war camps in Scotland? It's like, well, they fought against us. And do you know who fought with us? The Russians.
They ended up sending a whole bunch of them went to Canada. And that's probably why that whole embarrassing thing happened at the Canadian Parliament, where they brought this World War II vet into the Parliament and they gave him a standing ovation, and he's like, "Yeah,
was that under Trudeau? Was that under Trudeau?"
See the thing with the American government, right? The American government, even the British government, because I'm British, I don't want to be banging on about the American when the Brits are the same, right? But the American government is atrocious, right? I mean, there's a Second World War, right? Apparently, and even Argentina as well, right? Because America went over and they took all their top scientists that helped with all their space stuff, as far as I'm aware, I think they were involved with Argentina allowing Adolf Hitler to go to Argentina. Apparently, he wasn't shot by a woman on the head, as it was said. It was
that not Peron?
No. In fact, he got accused of suicide, but apparently he lived the rest of his life in Argentina. Right?
Yeah, was that not under the fascist government of Peron? in Argentina.
Yeah. But the American CIA and everything, they've
they were
all known
involved.
it the whole time, right? And now the Argentina president came out, and he's apparently came out and says, yes, Adolf Hitler lived the rest of his life here. So that was just a big lie. He never committed suicide. So if the American government can tell lies with stuff like that, what else are they going to tell lies about? Especially when Hitler created the biggest atrocity in human history.
I
Okay,
think that
people-
was like the plot of Captain America, the third one. They said Project Paperclip, and it's SHIELD is the CIA, and they were secretly infiltrated by like Nazis, basically, or whatever the.
Guys,
And the thing with Argentina, there's a lot of former generals from the German army that lived the rest of their life there.
Good. We need to move on for the sake of time, right? To a subject I know you want to talk about anyway, Greenland. So we've got this whole situation with Greenland people, and I just want to contrast two clips we have. One of Trump, I think yesterday, and one a few days ago. So video, I think it's video 2.
What do you plan to say to European leaders in Davos when they push back on your Greenland plan?
Well, I don't think they're going to push back too much. Look, we have to have it. They have to have this done. They can protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders are very good people, but they don't even go there. And, because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left, that doesn't give you title to property. So we'll be talking about it with the various people. We've had tremendous success, and I've done more for NATO than anybody else. I don't think you'd have NATO right now. I got them to go 5% and pay as opposed to 2% and not pay. I've done more than any other American president for NATO by far. And we'll see how that goes. But Greenland is very important.
And here's the next one.
Well, we have a concept of a deal. I think it's going to be a very good deal for the United States, also for them. And we're going to work together on something having to do with the Arctic as a whole, but also Greenland. And it has to do with the security, great security, strong security, and other things.
The market, 600 points, getting back a lot of some of the nervous.
Okay, so from what I understand, this new deal gives the US sovereignty over new bases, new parts of Greenland. And so the way I see it, this allows the United States to take Greenland incrementally. So we've got one large base there. In a year, they can have 5. And then the territory in the base and around the base will be sovereign US territory. In 10 years, it can be 10 locations. In a generation, it can be 50 locations, and they own about 50% of Greenland. So it just means that the US has to wait a while and do it incrementally as opposed to one swoop. Is that the way you two see it? Bruce, start with you.
Yeah, basically. I mean, look, once you start like allowing foreign bases all over your country, you've already lost it. I mean, so the bases will be sovereign. But what are you going to do when the U.S. has 20 bases on there and you don't even have one, or maybe you have one? You have like a barracks. It's like basically theirs already. So and they could do whatever they want. Have you heard of the speaking of like some? Did you ever hear of Project Iceworm?
No.
Hear that one? You should look it up on Wikipedia, Project Iceworm. But it is a real thing. It came out that it was secret, and it was back when the United States had a whole lot of bases all over Greenland during the Cold War.
Yeah, they had 16 bases at one point, didn't they?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I have to look at the timing of when Iceworm was like happening. Project Iceworm was happening, and when this actually happened, but I think it was like in the early 60s or the early 70s. Might have been the early 70s when the U.S. offered Denmark like $100 million in gold for Greenland, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was like 50 years ago that they offered $100 million to buy it, and Greenland turned them down. But what might have happened actually, because that seems kind of random, but Project Iceworm supposedly was this plan for the United States to build tunnels underneath all the ice in Greenland, under the ice sheets, that it would be able to maneuver nuclear weapons through, so they could launch from anywhere under the ice sheets at the USSR. And it sounds to me that like Denmark didn't approve of it, right? They were like, the U.S. asked them if they could do it, and Denmark's like, no, we don't want you to do that.
We don't want a
so the project didn't go through, but I think they offered to buy it. They're like, well, if you won't let us do it, then we'll just buy it from you. And then they were like, no, you can't do that. So the project was, basically got stymied. And U.S. after 1991, they closed everything down except for that one base with a couple hundred people. But I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. is like, let's do Project Iceworm again, just to like.
Like there isn't satellites that can detect a radiation signature under a sheet of ice. The Russians are going to know there's got nuclear facilities, nuclear weapons, missiles, and the core. Hugh, what do you think? Because I think you're in favour of this Iceland season operation.
First of all, I couldn't hear the video because it kept pausing. There's a problem with the YouTube one. So
Trump was basically saying they've reached a deal on Iceland.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a video. Obviously, I've already seen.
That's your fault, Bruce. The Project Iceworm. I'm saying Iceland now. Greenland. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, America's been interested in Greenland for a long time. I think after the Second World War ended in 1945, I think Truman, tried to buy Greenland in 1946. I think, is that correct? So America's had an interest in Greenland for a long time, and I think there was some agreement made between. I think America kind of had occupied it heavily during the war, something like that. I'm not too sure, but America had made an agreement giving it back to Denmark, and America got the Virgin Islands or something like that. It was some deal that was made, right? But see the whole Greenland.
St. James Epstein Island. They got that old St. James Epstein Island from Denmark.
Yeah, we got Epstein Island. That's all we got. That's what the Biden administration got, right? But
no, in the 40s, what they got little St. James Island from.
I heard something about that, which I thought was funny the other day. But I mean, when you look at the map from where the North Pole is, right? And as I was saying before, you look where the USA is, you look where Greenland is, you look where Venezuela is, you look where Alaska is, which obviously there's an ice bridge once a year that you can get from Alaska to Russia and stuff like that, right? Alaska and Russia are so close, right? And obviously we bought Alaska from them, right? But then when you kind of look north on the map of the north, it's like north of the Earth, right? You see kind of Canada up there, up to the left, and then you see Russia over to the right, and it suddenly hits you more why I think America's had an interest in that location for so long, because if one of these countries had to fire a ballistic missile that obviously goes 6,000 miles per hour, you want to have as many warning signs going off and as many possible tracking devices tracking that from satellite as early as you can. Now, I know America's got their star base, I think, up in Greenland and stuff like that. I know, but I think they want a heavier military presence so they can have all the hardware that can track these missiles if they're fired towards the USA. Obviously, they would need to go over Canada and stuff like that. Some of them. But I think it is truly a military kind of thing they're doing it for. I think they just want to have an early warning system. I don't really think it's to do with the minerals, as a lot of people are talking about. But knowing the USA, most likely they are after the minerals too, because the hold China has with that sector, you know. So I think they're after the minerals, they're after protection as well. And the way, and maybe if America does want the minerals and they want to use the gold dome as an excuse to try and take Greenland, they're pretty much going to say to the European Union, it's like, you know, it's like if we get this part of Greenland, XYZ amount of it, then we are not only protecting us, but we're going to get early warnings signals to protect you as well. And I think maybe this is how Mark from NATO is kind of on with the idea now, you know, because I think he understands that if America has that, they can protect Europe as well, you know, and there's less money that Europe has to pay.
Really? What do you think about that, Bruce?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, these people are insane. So, you know, who knows why they want Greenland? You know, I mean, like, yeah, I have some ideas. You know, I think the Project Iceworm thing, you should look into it, because I think that's it's a possibility there. But I think that you know, one thing I thought of was like, maybe they want the water. You know, the thing's melting like crazy. You know, and water is super valuable. You know, I live in Washington State, the Pacific Northwest, and we have water being sold here to Saudi Arabia. It's being taken from here to Saudi Arabia by tankers. Now here we have Greenland, which is just pouring water off those glaciers, and it's dumping straight into the ocean, and which is messing up the salinity levels and the currents and everything like that. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if they throw a pipeline for water from Greenland across over to the United States or Canada or something.
I mean, to be honest, that could be another thing as well, because obviously, it's not salted water; it's pure water. You know, it's drinkable water. That could be another reason as well. So maybe he's thinking to do with all the rare earth minerals, maybe to do with kind of these this water that obviously America could pretty much bottle up or pipe along, and then I guarantee there's going to be lots of oil and gas they can find around Greenland as well, and then see that guy Nick Shirley we've all been following, who's doing the whole thing in Minnesota, right? So he done a show where he went to Greenland and he started asking people from Greenland if they were pro or against Trump taking over Greenland, right? And obviously when I watched it, I thought, you know, they're all going to say, yeah, they're for it, because I kind of look at him and think he's maybe a Republican or something like that, and he's going to do anything to kind of side along with Donald Trump. But a lot of people he was interviewing were saying Greenland is for the Greenlanders only. It's not for Denmark to decide. It's not for the USA to decide. And there was a lot of people who in Greenland were saying they don't want America to come in and start taking all the minerals and stuff like that, because they're saying this is the Greenlanders, it's not Denmark's and it's not the USA's. So it was kind of like mixed feelings beyond the 53 or 57,000 population. They're all it's like a lot of them are saying, yeah, I want to become 51st state of America, I want McDonald's, and then the other person's saying, you know, I don't want McDonald's and all that nonsense out here. You know, it's you know, I think it's mixed on in Greenland. You know, it's like there's people.
Is it true? Sorry for interrupting you, but is it true that part of this deal, every Greenlander gets $1 million?
It's all mixed. Some people are saying 1 million, some people are saying 100,000, and then Trump was asked about how much he would be willing to pay, and he refused to say it. But there's another thing that goes through there as well. There was another number that got through there, and it says if America does take part of Greenland, it's like Denmark would still need to pay the Greenlanders 600 million per year. I'm not too sure what that's to do with, but that's basically what they're saying. They would need to pay the Greenlanders 600 million per year, and then you think to yourself, well, with a population of 57,000, I mean, what are they going to do? Is that towards infrastructure, or is it towards...
You made an argument earlier as to why it not only benefits US security, but it would also benefit European security. But you could also make an argument that it doesn't benefit European security, but it doesn't benefit UK security. So you're right. Maybe one reason he wants Greenland is so he can create this golden dome and place lots of interceptors and new radars in Greenland, for example, right? But maybe the reason he wants to do that is because he wants to pull out of Europe. Maybe he wants to pull a lot of these forces out of Europe and retreat into the Western Hemisphere, because he believes fundamentally that not that we are moving into a multipolar world, but that we are already in a multipolar world, and that Europe must look after European soil, and that America must look after American soil. And the best way to look after American territory is to create this umbrella of missile defense, and that he must seize Greenland to do that. Therefore, it's not in the interests of the Europeans to Trump to Greenland.
I mean, I can see your point, and I do agree with you there, Vinny. Right? I did think to myself, with them saying that they're going to be closing military bases around the world, the USA pulling out from places, I thought to myself, maybe they're going to relocate a lot of these forces to Greenland and other places, maybe Venezuela and stuff like that. And I think with the Iron Dome and stuff like that, you would think to yourself, right, if America does have the Iron Dome, Golden Dome, then if no one can penetrate the USA, then why would the USA need to pay billions and billions of dollars protecting European countries? They wouldn't have to anymore. So maybe Trump, being the most anti-war president we've had, apart from basically a few little slip-ups here and there.
He's anti-war.
I'm saying biggest. I mean, the thing with Venezuela, that was like a very quick thing. We can't really call that a war and stuff like that. The thing.
So if you bomb and attack another country and basically decapitate the government, that's not a war.
I mean, to me, I see that as helping, but not actually entering into a full-scale war.
So the protesters that are on the streets of Minneapolis, how would they feel if a foreign government, if China, for example, bombed the White House and took Donald Trump over? Right? Is that helping the American people?
Our perspective in the United States.
But the thing is, funny, right? It's like a lot of those people at those protests, they're bussed in. They're not real.
And I don't condone that. We don't blow up the White House. Yeah. But I'm just saying, you know.
See the way I was saying, right? I think the way Trump's thinking is if we can protect ourselves, then we don't need to police the world. And he's claiming that America's spending. It was complaining about all the money America was spending in Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, and it was like billions and billions every year. Right, and I think over the years it's went into trillions. Now, I think the way he thinks is that money would be best spent on defense rather than defense of the USA rather than defending the rest of the world. So he may say it's to help protect Europe as well, but maybe if Europe needed USA, maybe he wouldn't do it. Who knows? And maybe it's that he thinks that the EU and NATO and all that, they need to step up and start paying money, because it's like each country that's in NATO is like they've got a certain percent of a GDP they've got to pay towards NATO, and a lot of them have been falling behind. And America pays the biggest part of that, and then you've got, I think, Germany's number 2, and then the UK's number 3, and then the rest.
What does it benefit us? What does it benefit us to spend 3% of our GDP? Because I believe, as you said, you alluded to this, how Trump wants us to spend 5% of our GDP on defence. Now, it doesn't say anything in the charter, the NATO charter, that we should be spending 5% of GDP on defence. That's Trump. That's just Trump that's coming out with that. And the reason he's coming out with that is because he's a weapons salesman. He's a salesman. Mm-hmm. He wants American manufacturers to make money. And so, you've got all these big companies like Raytheon and Lockheed, and they're making a lot of money now. So is Rheinmetall in Germany, so is BAE Systems in the UK. So if you want these weapon contractors to make more money, spend upwards of to 5% on defence. But I don't see how that's going to make us any more secure, because a lot of this weaponry, for example, for the Pearl program, is going to Ukraine, and it's just continuing the war and making us less safe. A lot of the money that's going to be spent in the next couple of years in the United States, because as we know, the United States military budget is to be upwards of $1 trillion. I think it's 1.5 trillion. So that's benefiting you guys, let's face it. I mean, it's strange when I talk to Americans about this. It's like, would you rather your government spends 1.5 trillion on building bombs to kill people you'll never meet and thousands of miles away, or would you rather have it invested in a healthcare system or housing system that will ensure that when you're sick or when people who you love are unwell, that they're taken care of, they don't die at the age of 40, or they don't need to spend like $200 a month for insulin. It's mad. I don't
it's insane. We're an insane country. We shouldn't do any of this. I mean, look, the idea that we need to spend a dime more on protecting ourselves is ludicrous. I mean, we're the biggest military the world has ever seen. If we're not secure enough now, we never are going to be. Who's going to fight us? Are we going to fight aliens? Because that's the only thing that could defeat the United States. We're surrounded by oceans too. I mean, Russia? I mean, sure, we could do a nuclear total destruction of the world, thing. But that's always been an option for my whole life. But we don't have to build another weapon for the United States, and we'll be safe for the next 100 years. We can have I've heard that the New York Police Department is either the 9th or the 10th largest army in the world. It's just the New York City Police Department.
Yeah.
So it's a very militarized. You live in a militarized.
See the whole thing with the way Americans spends their taxpayer dollars on military hardware. It's like, and even the UK, for a small island of what the UK is, right? It's the biggest deterrent the USA and Britain has to this day is the Trident system, which is the submarines, right? It's like it's like the British basically store the submarines in Scotland, Fowles Lane, which obviously the Scottish people are not happy with. It's a nuclear subs, and basically that's supposed to be the biggest deterrent in the world, the Trident systems, because no one can detect them. They're like stealth subs that are under the water. And if someone tries to nuke the UK, then they're going to wipe. I mean, for instance, if Russia tried to nuke the UK, obviously they would wipe the UK off the planet easily. But the only thing that would stop them from doing it is knowing that the UK has some of the most powerful nuclear weapons on their subs that can
the UK can't use
Russia, and the fact that one second, it's the fact they cannot detect where in the sea they actually are. That's
the UK can't use that without the permission of the United States, because the UK doesn't have the space-based infrastructure.
Yeah, but
so why are we spending $1 trillion on Trident if we can't use it? If Russia, wait a second before you speak, if Russia decided to attack the United States the United Kingdom into nuke us, we wouldn't be able to launch anything back that was nuclear towards Russia without the permission of the US. And if Trump said no, your trident is useless.
But the thing is with Russia, right? Russia, it's a different setup from the rest, from the other big nuclear powers. It's like Putin can't just push a button and say nuke this country. It's like it's got to go through a chain of command, and it just takes one of those people to deny to actually launch it, and it's not going to happen. This is what they're saying. This is where America has their strengths, because if Donald Trump authorizes it, it happens. No one else can stop him from doing it. Whereas Russia, it's a whole chain of command.
That was a good point. That's definitely. I mean, how you interpret that as a strength for you is
What's
quite
that?
paradoxical. You thought that because Vladimir Putin needs the permission, or he has to consult several other people before he launches a nuclear weapon, the fact that you consider that a weakness is quite, it's inverted or perverted. I don't,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like that's. I mean, my easiest way of figuring out U.S. foreign policy for people who aren't as deeply involved as the three of us are. I'm just like, all right, take whatever you heard in the Western press and from Western leaders, flip it over 180 degrees, and you're going to be pretty close to. You're going to be way more close to what's actually going on. Because, I mean, look, Russia's not going to nuke anybody. There's no reason to nuke anybody. Why would they nuke anybody? Why would anybody nuke anybody? I mean, it's just like Europe's gone insane with this Russia stuff. And part of the thing with Greenland, by the way, Vince, I would say, is that I think that I was hoping that Greenland was a move by Trump to pressure Europe to basically come to an agreement with Russia regarding a European security agreement, which would hopefully end the Ukrainian conflict. I thought, because that was, you could almost see it, the United States is going to sabotage, it's getting frustrated with its European partners who have been kind of stabbing Trump in the back. They're basically waiting for a Democrat, the next president to come on, so they can, so that they'll have the back in the United States for their World War III dreams.
See the whole thing with Vladimir Putin, right? It's like, it's like Vladimir Putin wants to. It's like Donald Trump's been talking about this world peace force or something like that. I can't remember what you call it, right? And Russia's pretty much. Yeah, and it's like Putin's pretty much saying, well, there's $1 billion you have of sanctions against us. We would like to give that money towards that cause. We would like to be part of this thing. But the EU doesn't even want to talk to Russia. This is a problem, right? It's like it's like Trump will pick up the phone and talk to Vladimir, but the EU won't talk to him at all.
Yeah, they're just talking amongst themselves.
It's like how are you going to be able to work things out if you're talking to Zelensky, who the Ukrainians don't even want in power? He's forced himself on the people there, right? It's like you're listening to him, your puppet, but you're not allowing Putin to have any words himself. And it just seems to be that Trump's the middleman. He's the person trying to get everyone to talk. And I just feel like Europe is just itching for a war against Russia. You see how they're building up around Russia and all these countries, and I mean, if obviously the European countries started parking all the military hardware in Canada and Mexico and all that stuff, we would have the same problem, So why should Putin be any different? I don't think Putin is our enemy. I think the EU is our enemy,
I'd like to just say one thing on this, and then because we're running a bit late and we're going to wrap this thing up, I'd just like to say one thing on this and then play a video and then just wrap it up. In regards to what you're saying about how the EU is the enemy and how Trump is trying to resolve things. There was that attack in Putin's estate in Valdai, right? And it's very interesting because there was only for example, three people on the entire planet who knew where Putin was at that time, because Trump, before he met Zelensky that day, at the day of the attack at Valdai, he spoke to Putin beforehand. If you remember this, he spoke to Putin, then he had a meeting with Zelensky, and he said, Putin, basically wait you where you are, and I'll get back to you after I speak with Zelensky. And while he was speaking to Zelensky, we had the attack at Valdai. And then Trump goes, don't know what you're talking about. How did that happen? Right, like Ukraine somehow launched a bunch of drones at Valdai. Where Ukraine doesn't have any space-based infrastructure, how are they going to know where Putin is? Right, there was only a handful of people in this world that would know that kind of information, and Donald Trump had a conversation with Vladimir Putin not that long ago, during just before the attack at Valdai. So begs the question, and this was what Scott Ritter conveyed, this was his point, that Donald Trump attempted to assassinate Vladimir Putin.
I personally don't think it is. Trump cannot trust everyone who's around him.
That was the opinion of Alex Jones.
We've been hearing that for a long time. It's well known that Trump's got people in the FBI, the CIA, and the Pentagon and all working against him. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone who is pro Ukraine, anti Russia, who basically spilled the information of Putin's whereabouts, for that to happen. But I personally don't think it was Trump, because Trump does like Putin. He wants to be the peacemaker who was potentially going to make peace with North Korea and Russia. And I think he's starting to look at things like, why don't we give these countries a chance? We've been penalizing them for many, many years. Maybe the problem isn't with them, but the problem's with the EU, because the EU have been stirring stuff up with Russia for years, especially after the agreement that was made about not allowing more NATO members to join NATO and stuff like that to surround Russia. And they lied about it. And then you had Bill Clinton. Got brought to his attention of Putin. And basically he done nothing about it. Every US president have failed to address the situation. And I just feel it came to the point that Putin's had no choice but to do something about it, And I think that's why.
Sure, it's come to the point when we have to. I want you just to play this video, right, and then we're going to wrap it up. This is a clip from a film, and this is an illustration, in a sense, of why I think we should just, all be friends.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Those are Minuteman missiles.
Like a test, sort of. Like a warning?
They're on their way to Russia. They take about 30 minutes to reach their target.
So do theirs, right?
Missile warning, this is Beale. Confidence is high. I repeat, confidence is high. Roger, we've got 32 targets in track and 10 impacting points. I want to confirm, is this an exercise? Roger, copy. This is not an exercise.
Roger, understand. Major Reinhardt, we have a massive attack against the U.S. at this time.
Hey! Oh, come on, baby. Don't die on me now. Oh.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe.
As
I'm glad you bang on the drum about the threat of nuclear war, because, geez, it seems like nobody else does.
Sean,
Yeah,
your rates here, Vinny, is yeah.
say that again.
Is that I was trying to look up to see what movie is that? Colossus.
That's the day after. That is the day after. Not the day after tomorrow. The day after. The day after tomorrow is the climate change one. That's the day after. An excellent film and one of the best films that show us how an instant between NATO and Soviet Union or Russia, like that must be avoided. That conflict must never happen, because once you're on that escalation ladder, you either go up or you go down. And I don't know if we're going in the right direction. I know people say Trump's intentions are good. I know people say that Trump wants to be friends with everyone. I'm not so sure. But again, I'm not in the corridors of power. But guys, I'm going to need to wrap us up. I think we've been doing this for 2 hours. It's been awesome having the both of you on. This has been great having you on, Hugh. Likewise. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Let's do it again.
Enjoy this. Bye. Oh, he's away.
And that was the probably the longest episode I've done on international relations and foreign affairs. And I hope you liked and enjoyed and learned something. I sure did. So if you feel like you want to help us out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And you can donate at Caledonian Elixir / Buy Me a Coffee. There'll be a link in the description. And there's also a couple of links on my YouTube channel. The next episode, we're going in a different direction. We have someone on to talk about the Gate Project. That was a project run by the CIA doing tests on children through the 70s to the 2000s. And so we're going to go into the Gate Project, the CIA, and that will be next week. So tune into that. Until then, everybody be cool. You be cool.
Gold-pressed platinum, slip strips and bars. If you ever find some, you can lose it in quads. Get a Ractogino, spin the double wheel. Order a black hole, just depends how you feel. Yeah, it just depends how you feel. Gold-pressed platinum, you know it's a gas. Mon vomits it up into a tiny little glass. Liquid platinum, more you amass. Better than bronze, cobalt, silver, nickel or brass. Silver, nickel or brass.